Welcome to Walking in Spirit and Truth. We are so glad that you've joined us this evening. And you are tuning in actually to part 3 of studying out Psalm 23, verse 3. So, yeah, this is the third part, I believe, of just verse 3. But it has been an amazing study thus far. And so you want to just jump in and check out the rest of it. If you can, go back and listen to our archives. My name is Sandi Craig. My husband and I, John, who is right there, pastor a congregation here in Amarillo, Texas, called Life of Worship. And of course, we meet on Saturday, Sabbath, Shabbat, at noon for our Torah study, as well as 3 o'clock for our service. And it is all done on YouTube Live. And you can go back and be with us live or listen to the archives. Or if you're coming through Amarillo, join us. We would love that. Also, you can donate there at our website, www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org, and help us to continue to get the word out. Do that. And our prison ministry and so many other things we do. We pray for our partners that are working hand in hand with us. So if you would go ahead and read Psalm 23, verses 1 through 3, I would greatly appreciate it. Everybody get out your Bible and begin to turn those pages and get ready to mark it up or do whatever you do.
There we go. All right, here we go. A Psalm of David. Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
All right. So we are looking at He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And we got partially through that last week, but before we continue on that vein, I want us to go ahead and look at for his name's sake, the name. Of course, when you hear the name, what is the name? Name, Shem. That should sound familiar to you. It's number 8034 in your Strong's Concordance. And it's used in the sense of a person's fame or reputation. Now, I'm going to explain that a little bit. But the name, of course, spelled Shem, in this sense, it's also your reputation, your renown, your fame. And you actually could not, when you're looking at the Tanakh, when you're looking at the scripture, you're not supposed to be able to separate the name from the character. A person's name is depicted in the person's life, how he lives. And so it is with Yah. Yahweh himself guards that dignity of his name. He guards it. We look at Exodus 20, verse 7. It says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain." Okay. Leviticus 19:12. "Neither shall thou profane the name or of Yahweh, for I am Yah." So desecrate, profane, desecrate. We can't desecrate his name. So when you look at these scriptures, you can look at Exodus 34:6. There are so many. We can even look at Malachi 3, verses 16 through 17. "Then they that feared Yehovah spake often to one another, and Yehovah hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared Yehovah, and that thou upon his name, and they shall be mine, saith Yehovah of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him." So Yahweh surely likes it when we use his name, when we study out his name. There's power in the name. There is power in the name. We should all be familiar with that. Psalm 103:1, "Bless Yehovah, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. For whosoever shall call upon the name of Yehovah shall be saved." I love that. Hour after hour, we could sit there and we could think about his name, and the many facets of his name that we can't even fathom to this point. But what I want us to get to is that Yahweh protects his name. He acts on our behalf for his name's sake. Sake, ma'an, M-A-A-N. He leadeth me into paths of righteousness. When we look at this, it's that plain, straight, safe paths, yes, but it's as we've been discussing. It's following in his way. When we look at the namesake, we can even look at Acts 9, verse 16. "For I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake." Ma'an. Ma'an. when we look at that. It's often hard to understand what it means, because how often do we use for his name's sake, for my name's sake? Do we use that very often? No. So we may not have quite the understanding that we should when this phrase is used. But when we look at it in the literal Greek sense, it you have this a much better idea, because it's on behalf of the name of me, is really what it means. Yeshua tells Ananias and Paul that Paul will become his official ambassador. Paul is about to embark on what? A life that represents Yeshua as his ambassador. So we have this idea when we say for his name's sake, is there's an official representation. Think about somebody that stands up for someone else. You could think of an army recruiter that works on behalf of the army. Recruiting, he's not the whole army, but he is working on behalf. He represents that institution. He operates in the army's name. So we have this expression that really would have been clear to people of the past, people when this word was written, but we don't quite get it. We don't quite understand it. But they lived in a world where officials often operated in the name of someone else. I'm here on behalf of da 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 da. So everything that proceeds from my mouth represents that person and his ideas and his thoughts and his name and his character and his attitude. That's why it's so very important that people that hire someone, even on jobs, they're representing that institution. They're represented the owners of that company. And so there needs to be a line drawn in the sand of who we're going to put before us to represent who we are. Because if it's a person of bad character and things like that do not believe like we believe, then what happens is the message is skewed and the idea of what we represent is distorted and falsely actually shown to somebody else. So when the followers of the way said, in the name of Yeshua, they were proclaiming allegiance to another king. Now that was pretty dangerous back then, wasn't it? They were proclaiming allegiance to another king. Now, when we say that, we just hear those words all the time, in the name of Yeshua. But those were words that could bring forth death in that day and that hour. Because what was the punishment? The proclamation itself could be punishable by death in the name of Yeshua. It's this living and dying testimony that he's our king. We know that our life is supposed to represent the king and his character and everything he is and what he does. So it's very important that we look like him, that we act like him, that we believe like him. I know one of the big things that we have to watch against as pastors is who is actually on what we call stage ministry. That means somebody that's out in front of the people, because if they don't believe as we believe, if they don't think as we think, then it will bring confusion and often cause a congregation to split and make our own name run through the mud. So one more time, are we going to do that for Yeshua in his name's sake? In his name's sake. It's very important to think about that concept. And then when you bring it to the idea of glory, whatever we do for his name's sake should bring his name glory, not our own. We're not out there to seek our own fame and our own prosperity and our own promotion, but we are in everything we do to bring glory to his name. When we keep his word, we bring glory to his name because he keeps his promises. He is the one that can back up what he says. He has concern for how his name is represented by his people. And when Israel dishonored his name, what did he do? He scattered them. Ezekiel 36, 19 through 21. And they were dispersed throughout the countries. I judged them according to their ways and their deeds. And when they came to the nations, wherever they went, they profaned my holy name when they said of when they said of them, these are the people of Jehovah, and yet they have gone out of his land. But I had concern for my holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. We're supposed to represent him in everything we do, because his name is also linked to his glory. Yeah. If you just look at the surface meaning of glory, you can see that it represents honor and praise and reputation, something bringing forth praise, worshipful adoration, magnificence, splendor. That's glory when you look at it without looking deeply into the Hebrew. But whatever we do, do all for the glory of God. That's 1 Corinthians 10:31.
Hey, so I have something to interrupt you just for a moment. I don't want to kick you off your flow there, but it goes right along with what you're saying. But to give some more emphasis to it, I was just looking at the root of what is the word, ma'an.
Mm-hmm.
And were you going to get there and talk about the root of that word, which is
Go ahead.
ana, ana, and the word ana, it goes exactly with what you're saying. So where it says that how do I want to read this here? Pay attention, by implication, to respond. So we're talking about for his name's sake. So in other words, when we, like you were saying, we are representing his name, by extension to speak, specifically to sing, shout, testify, announce, give account. So all of these different things, to cry, to hear, to lift up, to shout, to sing, speak, testify, utter, witness, all of these things, when we are representing his name, I love what it shows here, to sing, to shout. And, we can't discount worship when it comes through music. We can't discount that, because here, out of the very Hebrew, when he's leading us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So when we represent his name on the paths of righteousness, and what's the paths of righteousness? Following Torah. And so how do we express that? How we are lifting up his name through shouting, through singing, through speaking, through testifying. At Life of Worship, we have testimony time, and we'll have some people come up and say, hey, anybody have a testimony you want to give? Why? Because it's for his name's sake. It's because of the greatness of his reputation. It's for his fame. Why do we have music? Because it's for his fame. And we lift that up, just like they were doing out there in Canada. They were right in front of the Parliament building, and what were they singing? Oh, what a mighty fortress is our God. I mean, I know it's an old hymn, and also the doxology, praise God through whom all blessings flow. What are they? They were testifying of his name. It was for his name's sake. They were declaring his goodness, because it has to do with walking correctly according to his word. I just love that. It just all goes together.
How often do we diminish his name by not giving him glory? By being in those situations when when we have a public opportunity to declare who he is, and we shrink back and say nothing. I think that happens more often than we should allow it to happen. But I love how these people in Canada, and hopefully around other parts of the world, are banding together. And what are they doing? They're declaring his name. I love that. Well, as we continue, we're going to now go back to the rest of the verse that we were studying last week. And at the end of the show last week, we discussed future, and how in Hebrew thought, your future is behind you. And what you see, what you're looking at, is your past. You are looking at the testimonies of those that have gone before us, both recent and from long ago. You're looking at the Yahweh, the same yesterday, today, and forever. You are looking at your past, and he, the shepherd, is the one guiding you. But you face your past, and your back of your head faces your future when you break that word apart. But we were also looking at desire, because the desire, when you look at the whole phrase, the desire, the door behind, that's behind us, our desire. So when we're looking at righteousness itself in the paleo form, it's a little different than, yes, it is following his Torah, following his instructions, absolutely. But what is righteousness is, when you're looking at paleo, the door to the desire or your need is in the future. So if we want to be in the paths of righteousness, what do we have to do? We have to allow the shepherd to bring his staff to control the chaos around us and bring us in the direction that he wants to bring us, so that we enter into the door, the desire of our door, the door that's going to open up to the path that leads us to the place of rest. And what should our desire be? As we discussed last week, ultimately our main desire should be rest that we get through him. So our main desire is him, because he is the one that leads us to our future. He's the one in the boat calling out, well, we're rowing and we're moving into our future, but but from behind. It has something to do with where I'm going and what is happening, but it's behind my head. We have to follow the shepherd and stay on the path that the shepherd has given us, not our own ideas, not our own hopes and dreams, because hopefully those have come from him and from his throne, that we don't stand apart on those things. The imagery that David is presenting here is to be in the paths of righteousness, is to do what the shepherd does, to follow what the shepherd does, what he leads us to do. Because with his staff, what's he doing? He's controlling everything around us, the waves and the chaos that are going on all around us, on our sides, everywhere, so that we can stay on track, so that no matter what storm comes our way, we're still remaining on the path that he has placed us on, not veering to the right or to the left, because he's controlling the chaos around us. Though it may be around us, all around us, we are safely protected by the shepherd who's leading us along the way. We don't have to know where we're going. We trust him because he's leading us there, because he's leading us to the place of rest, so that we can be nourished, so that we can be comforted, as long as we stay on his path and trust him. He's bringing us in the right direction. But we have this issue because we want to do it on our own and have things our way. We do this over and over again, and we get off path. We go astray. Yeah, he has to come get us. Psalm 23, we need to look at it from the perspective of sheep. And what does a sheep do? Well, the sheep obeys the shepherd. The sheep follow the shepherd. So the paths of righteousness are not necessarily what we're experiencing at this very moment, but because that's where we're going. He's leading us in paths of righteousness. So even though we could go astray any moment, as long as we follow and trust the shepherd, we're going to get to where he wants us to go. And in that place only will we be satisfied, will we find rest, will we see him. Let's think about Peter walking on water. Okay, he gets out of the boat. He's fully in faith. His eyes are focused and stayed on Yeshua. And as long as his eyes and his gaze is focused on Yeshua, he is walking on the water. He is walking in the supernatural. He is a living, walking miracle. What's happening all around him? The waves are roaring. The storm is there. The wind is blowing. The sound of thunder clapping. There's chaos all around him. The enemy would like him to think that there's death all the way around him, and he will be consumed by the waters. But his eyes and his gaze were focused on Yeshua, Yah. And because of that, he could do all things through Yeshua. And that included walking on water. But the moment he looked around and he began to observe the chaos over his king, what happened to him? He sunk. So we see this imagery one more time, that we must stay on his path, trusting in him to lead the way. It's not like it's a hidden path. It's not. We follow him. Period. It's easy. It's clear. In other words, it's clear to see what we're supposed to do. It's just getting us to do what we're supposed to do. Just follow him and listen to his voice. What good is a shepherd if he says, just go whatever direction you want? That's not what he does. He says, follow me, follow my way. We have to understand that following in the footsteps of the shepherd, we're going to bring us to what we desire most, that rest in him. So when we look at the paleo of the right of righteousness, as we discussed before last week and in part right now, we look at the door to the desire, which is my need to make sure that my future is secure, how the shepherd will take me there, and the shepherd will take me there. Hebrews says that we can know something about our future. Absolutely. What is it? That is good. Now, we may not understand the journey there, but we know that it is good. The path may be difficult, may be tumultuous, but it's still good. Our future is good. We just have to obey and follow his way and follow his instruction. So next time somebody is looking at righteousness, you can just say, oh yeah, that's my desire to be at rest. Righteousness is my desire to be at rest. Absolutely. So now let's look at La Ma'an, and that is in order that this whole phrase that he leads us in paths of righteousness for his namesake. We see this La Aman as it basically means a response, to testify, to speak. It's actually a connective phrase that we see over and over in the Hebrew, like so, or for the sake of, or because, or in order, or that. So it's a connective phrase that comes up. But let's look how it's spelled in the Paleo and see if we can have some more insight into what this phrase means in this context. Because we have a lamed, a mem, and an ayin. That's how it's spelled in the Paleo or in the Hebrew. And in the Paleo, let's look at the pictures of it. Because basically, the lamed is one more time. It's a picture of the shepherd's staff, which means to control, to have authority, or the voice of authority. And the mem is the waters. It's a picture of waters that can be chaotic or destructive. And it's also pictures of waters that can be like a gentle stream or a gentle rain or a tsunami, which is destructive, or gentle rain that brings forth life. We have both sides of this mem and this water. It can be the living waters of Yahweh that brings life. And it can also be the trials and testing. Okay, so now we have the ayin, and the ayin means to see or to know or to experience. And then the noon, which is this picture of life, this picture of activity. So when you look at the basic words of those just combined, you have control, chaos, experience, life. But let's look at it in more of a sentence form, bringing all the meanings together in the Paleo Hebrew. The voice of authority who has control will remove the chaos and be as rain so we can see and experience life. That is amazing. That is so good. The voice of authority who has control will remove chaos and be as rain so we can see and experience life. One more time, he is the one that controls the chaos all around us. It's not us. If we continually try to correct the environment that's around us in our own means, in our own efforts, by our own quote unquote talents, all we're going to do is increase the chaos around us. He is the only one that can stay the chaos. He is the only one that can bring that shalom, where there is nothing missing, nothing broken, fullness, wholeness, and completeness in him. Somehow, because of the shepherd's action, we will overcome the chaos, and we're going to find that we experience life in the full because we simply follow him. Why is it that we fight him? That we kick and throw a temper tantrum or push and shove and do everything except follow him, find our excuses, find our reason, when he is the one that's going to bring us life, and that more abundantly, that's going to remove the storms, that, or at least that our path will be without storm where we're walking, even though it's all around us, that we will be safe and secure and we'll find rest and our assurance in him. Why do we fight it so much? I can't answer that question. I think we all have to look at it, because we all do it. We just need to follow him. And as a result, we're going to overcome the chaos through him and experience life in the full. What an amazing promise. It's not big enough that oftentimes we stop struggling. We struggle because we want things our way, how we want it. We don't want to take the time. It's a human struggle. Now, is it wrong to pursue the joys of life? No, I'm not saying that. I'm absolutely not saying it. And rabbis actually tell you that a man that deprives himself of the joys of life has actually diminished God's intention. But if we are solely about finding the joys in life and not about finding him, if he is not our focus and he is not our goal, I don't think we're ever going to truly find the joy, because he has made an amazing world around us. Yes, he has. But he's also got a path for us to follow. But the result of Psalm 23 is that if I divert from the path, I will not reach the righteousness of rest. It's not going to happen. And that's really what we want. We want the chaos to be removed. We want to just chill. We can't go live on an island. We can't say, well, I wanted to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to do whatever it is. We need to follow his way, not our way, because one way is the kingdom. One way is his kingdom. The other way is a legacy or an empire, or is our way, our kingdom. And we get so caught up in building our kingdom that we fail to pursue his kingdom. And then our life has this kingdom against kingdom struggle. And that struggle's all around us, but we bring it really close to us because we are not following his paths and pursuing his kingdom, his way, his paths of righteousness, his word. We're not being led by his staff. We're trying to lead ourselves and failing greatly. So which one are we going to build? Which one are we going to follow? We have to choose. We have to train ourselves to walk on his path in spite of what looks like all around us. Ooh, the mountains over there. Ooh, that thing over there. Ooh, that great house. Ooh, that there are so many oohs that draw our eyes to the side. Some are good, absolutely, balance. But we are so easily led astray, as if someone is a speaker and something flies by their eyes and then they completely lose track of where they are. Sometimes we're like that. It's a rabbit or a squirrel gets in our path. That's the enemy oftentimes, so that we lose our focus and we begin to drown and not even know we're drowning, just as Peter was drowning. We have to follow that path. That's what we want deep inside, that rest. But our nefesh, our soul, is fighting us all along the way oftentimes. So we have to train ourselves, as I said, to listen, to hearken to his voice. We have to know the voice of our shepherd. We have to be obedient sheep. For my sheep know my voice. But sometimes the sheep still get lost. They do. But we have to become dependent upon the shepherd. And that's one word that we don't like necessarily as people. We want to be the independent. You see over and over and over again that when somebody rises up to lead a group, oftentimes the others will take them down because they want to be the leader. They want to be independent. They want others to follow them, or at least they want to be in charge of their own destiny. Well, when we're in charge of our own destiny, we fail, we falter, and we fall. It is only when we look at him and his paths of righteousness, when we follow his way, when we are led by him and him alone, not our own desires. The way the sheep work is that the shepherd thinks for us. Okay, Am I saying that you don't have any responsibility to think on your own? Absolutely not. But the shepherd's the one in charge of where we're going. And he does lead us. He does direct us. And the promise of paths of righteousness is that we will have the rest we've always longed for. So then we go back one more time, another look at his name as it's attached to this, Shmo, his name. What do you hear when you say that? Well, you hear Shem, of course, but you have here the Shin, the Mem, and the Vav. So the Shin is that picture of consuming or destroying. It's that picture of teeth in the paleo. It can mean to press in order to tear something apart, or to destroy in order to bring forth life. And then you have the Mem, which is, one more time, the chaotic waters, chaos, or the waters that bring forth life. And then you have the Vav, which is that nail or that wooden hook. And it means to fasten or to secure things together, to secure, to separate. So you have consume and destroy, chaos and secure when you look at Shemo. And that's what a good name does. It secures the destructive elements of chaos. His name is responsible for the righteousness of the rest that we desire. It's his name. In his name, we're going to find that. How is chaos secured? How is it removed? By the name, by Yah. It's his name that brings forth righteousness. It's not just for his name and reputation. We've discussed that in his namesake is about name and reputation, yes, but there's more to it than that, because God's name reflects his righteousness, and that's who he is, because he leads me on the path to him. Yeah, our path is supposed to be to him. Peter's gaze was on him. He was going on a path to him. The object is Yahweh. The path takes us to him. All the religious stuff is great. Sins forgiven, great. Going to heaven, being with him, great. But our path is supposed to take us directly to him. That is supposed to be the most important thing here. So we have to examine whether we're acting like sheep. Is he really the desire of our heart? Is he? Is he really the desire of our life? Or do we look for comfort and prosperity, security, fame, fortune, power? The object of our life is Yahweh himself. He is the object of our life. We can't be looking elsewhere. It's not going to work. He is the object. And the object of our life is God himself. And in the end, the whole of creation is designed to glorify him. One more time, we're designed to glorify him. So any other desire that we have that gets more of our attention, more of our excitement, has become an idol in our lives. So we need to understand that more than anything, we need to speak sheep. It's about our communication, the sheep and the shepherd. How do we communicate? How do we speak? How do we listen? There's no way that we can truly understand unless we understand the language of the sheep. The word says, the sheep know my voice. Well, that means we understand his language. We know the intonation, his vocabulary. We know his whisper. We know his voice, and it's become so familiar to us that even if it's soft, we go and we respond immediately to what he says. I'm listening to the shepherd, and he's guiding me to rest, which is Yahweh himself. Absolutely. Think about Elijah. Elijah has this big battle. He wins. Prophets of Baal, they're slaughtered. They're defeated. But then Jezebel comes around and causes him to flee. She threatens him. So later, does he hear him in the thunder? Does Elijah hear Yah's voice in the thunder? No. Where does he hear him? He hears him as a whisper, that whispering path, that whispering voice. Can we hear it? Are we even in the place where we're following the paths of righteousness so chaos has been removed or separated from us so that we can hear his voice? If we're not following him in his way, the answer is no, we're not truly going to hear. We may hear a voice and call it his voice, but it's not his voice. It's a voice of something else that's trying to direct us and lead us down a path, and we're associating it with the name of Yahweh, but it's not his voice. We cannot fear tomorrow. We simply follow him because our desire is Yahweh himself. We don't want Yahweh to have to turn up the volume so that we finally listen to his voice, that we finally hear. I think about John and I. It was time for us to, we had known it was time at this specific congregation for us to leave for some time. This was years and years ago. We had initially been filling in, and the pastor was back by that time, and the pastor he had great conflict with John, and I stood in the gap, and therefore with me as well. And even before that, though, we knew it was time to leave, and we didn't leave. And so this great conflict came up. Why? Because we didn't listen to the whisper, so the big storm had to come. That's what happens. Are we going to respond immediately in obedience? He loves obedience more than sacrifice. Are we going to be on our path or his path? We have to choose. We have to choose. So he leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He leads me on the paths to him as he secures life around us to have a life to the full when we follow his name.
You know, isn't it something, Sandy, that we've talked to people about so many different times, and we've experienced it ourselves, that we always say, you know, when there's a question, it's like we come up to a fork in the road when we're walking through life. Do I go here? Do I go there? Do I move or do I stay? Do I do this job or not? Do I leave this job and believe for another job? Or, you know, what do I do in this relationship? And the issue always comes down to this very verse where it says, he leads me in the paths of righteousness. And that leading is, it's founded on his rest. It's founded on his shalom. And how many times we say, well, where is the peace? Do you have peace about it? Do you, in other words, is there striving where you feel conflicted, but you feel like you got to do it? Or is there peace that's resting on it to where, you know, this is the decision to go forward as opposed to stay where you're at or to go a different direction. And so we always say, you know, where is the peace? Where's the rest? Because that's where he's leading us. That is how he leads us, is on those peaceful paths, on those where he keeps us out of the storm. But if we don't listen, like you and I, that one time, because we waited too long, the path of peace was going in a different direction, but because we didn't move, a storm came.
A storm to get us to move. Yeah, and we've done that more than once.
Yeah, and it's normal. It's normal in life that, you know, we like to say we walk this life out perfectly, but that's how we learn to heed his voice. That's how we learn to kind of walk through the difficulties of life and so that with maturity, we get to understand our shepherd's voice.
That's right.
We know it better, and we know that's his leading. We know that breath, that sigh, that whisper is his leading, that nudge to go forward. And we don't. I mean, that wind gets pretty rough, and our ship gets rocked a little bit, and we got to find Yeshua in the middle of the storm and say, please help us.
Right. He'll reach out his hand. But I think in the midst of this, as he's leading us to paths of righteousness, following his word, being obedient to his word, and trusting in him, we always have to remember that we face the things that have already happened. Our back is towards the future. Therefore, we can't worry about tomorrow. He's the one that's got us for our tomorrows. And that's really hard. That's a hard concept to walk out, where we just simply rest and with the testimony of Yeshua on our lips and the things that he's done for us and those around us currently and in times past, as he's leading us to him along his way, as we're obedient to him and only staying upon his path, and we find life. But realizing that we don't worry about tomorrow, we don't fret about tomorrow, is something I think we all need to look at and work on. Definitely work on.
Yeah.
But that is it for verse 3. We're going to go to verse 4 next week, and it is time for the next part of our programming. I'll let you take it from there.
All right. So, yeah, coming up very soon is the Craig Report, just on the other side of this break that we're going to take, and we'll see you over there. We got some great things that we need to talk about. So, shalom, and until next time, y'all have a blessed week.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website.